Welcome to the Nightly News Podcast. This is Professor Paul Miller, and I'm sitting in today with the Instruction and Reference Librarian, Samantha Schultz. Samantha, welcome to the Nightly News Podcast.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here.
You know, it's a wonderful opportunity to have you here. And one of the things and one of the reasons that I wanted to have you down here today is in the spring term, we are having the third annual research exhibition that will be on June 6th at the Conference Center from 3 to 5 for the third annual research exhibition. We're really looking forward to this, and the Nightly News will be a part of that. So we'll chat about that with you soon. So Samantha, you've been here for a few months now. Do you mind just giving us a little bit about your background and why you're so passionate about being a librarian?
Sure. So I used to work for an online learning program, so I really value flexible education. And then I got my master's degree in library and information science to become a librarian, because I think that research is something that we are all going to be doing forever, and I will talk about that in a little bit too in reference to the research exhibition. And then I worked at McDaniel College as a librarian and outreach librarian, so I did marketing to promote the resources. I've worked at United States Army Heritage and Education Center, so I helped do research there to create lesson plans for educators. So I just think education and research and all of the overlaps that exist with all of that is really important. And then I applied to Central Penn, and I've wanted to work at Central Penn for a few years now, but I knew I had to get experience and go to grad school and all that stuff first. So I'm super excited to be here.
What was it about Central Penn College that, I happen to have the fortune to be part of the panel for your position, and I was just blown away by your presentation. And I recall you saying how much you wanted to work at Central Penn College. What was it about the school that made you have such a desire to be here?
So previously, I worked at McDaniel College, which is a small liberal arts college, and then I worked at Dickinson College before that, which is another small liberal arts college, and I love the liberal arts, but I also, as I get older and as I become a more experienced educator, I think that being career-focused is really important too, so I think I equally value being career-focused and practical about education, but also grounded in the humanities and the social sciences and having a well-rounded education. And I think Central Penn has all of those things, so it can really set students up for success. So I wanted to work here.
Well, also, prior to you coming here, you'd said that you drive up to about 3 hours a day?
Yeah, I drove an hour and a half one way to work in Maryland, yeah.
That's insane. I can't even imagine the passion you have to have for your job to be willing to deal with that kind of commute.
Yeah, I really wanted to teach, and I really wanted to be a librarian, so that's what it was after grad school.
Well, and too, you know, when I was getting into my career, there weren't a whole lot of options in this area. You know, there's a few places, but really a whole lot outside of, you know, the Harrisburg area. It's, you know, an hour plus drive, and I actually in my past did teach at some of those places and did have to drive hour plus, and that's not fun. It's not fun to have that kind of commute.
It's not. I'm also closer to home now, so it's easier to feel like you're part of the community and you can actually do things and go to things that are after work hours, so that's nice.
Something that really impressed me from your interview was the fact that you were very involved in your local community. I remember that you were involved with helping some students with the GED. Would you mind explaining a little bit more about some of the things that you do in the community?
Yeah, so when I was in grad school, I realized that to be a librarian on a college campus, I'd be teaching a lot. And then I wondered, do I even like teaching? So I found this organization. I live in Perry County called Perry County Literacy Council about 4 years ago, I think it was. And I asked them if they needed help with teaching, and they said, yes, please. So I started teaching. I teach mostly math, but sometimes reading, writing, science, and social studies to adult learners in Perry County and Dauphin and Cumberland County sometimes who are trying to earn their GED because they dropped out for one reason or another. Everyone has their own story. So they get their GED. Sometimes it takes a few months. Sometimes it takes 3 or 4 years. And then they get a better job. They buy a house in the community, and it's really just good for the community all around and that individual.
One of the things that I always try to push, and one of the reasons actually I wanted to be involved at the college, number one, we do require internships for our traditional students. That was always a big deal for me because I thought that schools were kind of missing the boat if they didn't require their students to have that. But the second component, and one of the main reasons I love my job, is we do have a community service component to Central Penn College. And one of the things that I try to engage my students with is do not look at this as a requirement. Look at this as an opportunity to network, to improve your resume, to improve your opportunity when you get out of here. Because let's face it, the job market is extremely competitive. Especially, I mean, I can imagine for your position, it's not like there's, 100 opportunities for you in this area. There's limited opportunity in your field. And it's a way that really allows you to stand out above and beyond it. What's your opinion on other community service for our students?
Sure. So that's another reason why I wanted to work here too, is the civic engagement part. And I also think sometimes people think they go to college to get a good paying job, but I think you go to college to get perspective, to be more civically engaged for your communities and for your families. I think families and your households and communities, it goes back and forth. You have to have a good family to have a good community, and a good community to have a good family. So you have to play your role in all of that. So I think it's incredibly important, and I like that it's a value here, and I think that it should be.
I think that's, again, one of the main reasons that drew me to the school, the internship, not just what we're doing in the classroom. We are guaranteeing that before you leave the college, you are going to have some real-world experience. And I think that, unfortunately, in our society today, community service is not as valued as it should be, and that was certainly one of the things that stood out to me about you and when you gave your presentation for your interview. So that was really cool. Well, Samantha, we're certainly happy to have you, and we're certainly happy that you're not wasting 15 hours every single week driving to work. Now you're, about 15, 20 minutes away?
Yeah, 14 minutes away.
You got me beat. I'm about 20, 25 minutes away. So, well, we're very proud to have you here, so thank you very much for talking about that. Well, let's move on a little bit more to the research exhibition. Again, that's going to take place on June 6th at the Conference Center from 3 to 5 p.m. This is the third annual research exhibition. This is your first experience, but I can give a little bit of information about how things previously went. Always very well attended, an excellent opportunity for our faculty to make this into sort of a class project, but also allow students the opportunity to discuss their work. A lot of time in college, when students are doing a research paper, it's the paper. It's turned into one person, the professor, maybe, if some other people in the class see it. But one of the things I enjoy about this, and one of the reasons I've always had the club be involved in this, is it becomes an opportunity for them to discuss their research, which I think is something that maybe as in higher education nationwide, we don't allow students enough opportunity to discuss their research in a place like this, in an opportunity like this. What are your thoughts about in a general sense, about the research exhibition and the benefits?
Sure. So I think most likely people are going to move into positions in their career where they are expected to identify a problem, gather information, and then propose or present a solution to that problem. And that's all research is you have a research question and you answer it. So this is a really good way to kind of contextualize all of that information and then present it to somebody. Also, it's good for building your resume. This is an actual thing that you can put on your resume. It takes a lot of time and effort to do.
Well, and what's unique, too, is a lot of people... Now, of course, and trust me, I've had Steve Hassinger on enough times. He lets me know that the resume is still very, very important. I'm a big advocate of LinkedIn. And LinkedIn has a really cool option where you can put special projects on. And we're also, I think, moving a little bit more toward a digital portfolio as opposed to just a piece of paper resume, which, of course, resume is still very important. I don't want Steve to get mad at me, but it's really important for our students to be able to quantify what they've done. This gives them a perfect opportunity to do that, because not only are they developing something visual, they're also being able to talk intelligently in a very professional setting, almost kind of like a job interview in a way, if you think about it, right?
Yeah, it's like a presentation.
And I wish that I always try to make my research projects have a presentation component. That said, I'm in communication, and it goes hand in hand. In some of my other classes, though, and some of maybe my larger classes, I don't have the opportunity to allow each student to discuss their research. So I really think that this is an excellent opportunity for students to discuss. Now, I did note that registration for this does open on April 16th, so by the time this podcast is posted, registration will be open, and registrations are due by May the 20th. Now, our club, the Nightly News, has worked in a group before. Would you say that you anticipate most of the exhibits being an individual, a group, maybe a pair or a small group, or how do you think most of the exhibits will come in?
So this is my first year, so I'm not sure what it's been in the past, but I think most will probably be individual, but I do know a few classes are allowing options for groups or pairs, so it's not unique to have groups doing research together.
If I had to guess, I'd say most of them were either individual or two.
Yeah.
We were one of the few that did it sort of as a larger group, and we did it simply because we had a lot of people that wanted to be involved in it. So I do think that. Do you think that groups? Let's just say a group of students who weren't necessarily in a class and weren't compelled to do this for one reason or another. Do you think going into it as a group is an okay option to do here?
Oh, absolutely. I would advocate for group work because that's more practical and grounded too. You'll be doing that a lot after college or even now in college. So absolutely.
It's so interesting that you bring that up. I actually asked my class yesterday. I've really been moving toward more group projects. And every time, Samantha, I bring up about a group project, wouldn't you know, I always get the same result. Why do we have to do a group project? And one of the students did that exact same thing, and I called her out, and not in a rude way, but I said, tell me why. Why do you have that feeling about group projects? And it's the same response I always get. I'm the one that always ends up doing more than half of the work, and the people in my group shirked their duties. And I said, welcome to the workforce, right? We are in teams, and it's not that one person isn't pulling their weight. It's just sometimes we're more passionate about those things, we're more knowledgeable about those things. And I said that's just how things go, and we are expected when we get into the workforce to work as a team. I work with people all across the college, whether it's with the podcast or promoting events they have, and I hope that maybe by doing some more of these group projects in my classes, students won't get so upset and frustrated by having to work in groups. It is frustrating, but it's expected.
Well, it's also good to know your place within a group. Some people are leaders, some people are followers, some people are the organizers. It's good to know your place early on before you get to work. Also, part of our job is to set them up for realistic expectations. And sometimes working in a large group with adults is disappointing. So we have to make that realistic. And sometimes it's incredibly rewarding. Whenever you have a common goal with people, that's a good way to make friends.
Without a doubt. And in fact, the best piece of group work that I've ever been a part of is the nightly news. When we first started, we had to fight, every single day for even an opportunity to have an online blog. And just over the last couple of years, we've grown to now doing a quarterly publication. Just celebrated 50 episodes of the podcast. It's super exciting to have gone through this with so many of these students. Well, a couple more things I do want to talk about with the research exhibition. There's one major reason, beyond, of course, adding it to our resume, that I think that people might want to attend and participate, and it's the cash prizes. Would you like to talk a little bit more about the cash prizes involved?
Sure, yeah. We have cash prizes for, I believe, first, second, and third place. And then there's also an audience favorite. So if you have your friends come and vote for you, you can also get money. And then there are, I think, first and second place for the VoiceThread options, the digital options.
So not only is it if you're an on-ground student, but also if you're a virtual student, you can also participate in this research exhibition. So first place will be $100, second place $75, third place will be $50, and as you mentioned, the audience favorite will also receive $25 for those who do attend the research exhibition. There's also going to be a digital option where first place receives $50 and second place receives $25. So it's not only going to be wonderful for your resume, wonderful thing to add to your LinkedIn profile. There's a chance that you can win some money on this too. The last thing I wanted to ask you before we come back to some of this, beyond some of these things that we talked about, beyond the resume, beyond the cash, give me a pitch. If I'm a student, give me a pitch on why I would want to do something like this.
I think you're going to be solving problems for the rest of your life, and I think research is a huge part of the problem-solving process, and that's really it in a nutshell.
Well, I really, really hope that our students take advantage of this. I'm going to, along with this podcast, I'm going to put all the information that you need. There's a LibGuide you put together, Samantha, and it's just absolutely wonderful to have you here on campus. So we look forward to the research exhibition. The last thing I wanted to talk about with you was the Nightly News is going to be involved in it. In recent years, we've done about diversity in podcasting. Last year, we did something about public relations and job opportunities inside of public relations. If a student's out there thinking to themselves, this sounds great, I'm really interested, but I'm not really quite sure what to present about, what might be some suggestions for you? Maybe help the students brainstorm a little bit coming up with a subject.
Sure. I always ask students 2 questions when they don't know what to write about. The first question is, what do you care about? And that seems like a cheesy question, so I usually get blank stares, but then I have them make a list, and everyone cares about something, and then we can go from there. And the second question I ask is, what problems have you had recently? Because most people are facing problems, so we make a list, and then people start to realize, oh, I do have a lot of things that I could do research on. I just have to gather the information and then propose a solution. And then they come out on the other end of the research a little bit better of a person because they know a little bit more, so it's wonderful.
Well, what's interesting too is in higher education, obviously how long have you been in higher education?
Since 2008.
So, I mean, you're going on 10 years of being in this industry. I was in school for the better part of 10 years and have been working as a professor for 5. Higher education is certainly a good place to start. There are constant problems that in the higher education field as a whole that are happening, whether it's, increased tuition, reliance on financial aid, even student support systems at our colleges and universities. That might be an interesting thing to take on, because I'll tell you, that's where in the news you hear constantly about some of the issues there. Not only that, civically, with the Me Too movement, with the Black Lives Matter movement, I'm just hoping that if nothing else, our students do care about something or are keeping abreast of, the news that's going on about the things that really are important to them. And, another thing that I talk about a lot in my classes is voting. The fact that we only have a small percentage of, not even a majority of our individuals voted in our last election. And it's very sad because everybody seems to have an opinion, but then did you vote? Well, no. Oh, well, I voted in last year's, or 2016's presidential election, but I didn't vote last year because, I didn't really know any of the candidates. Well, whose fault is that?
Yeah.
So think of something that's important to you and propose a solution. That's what research is all about. So I really think that was an excellent point. Finally, Samantha, we are looking forward to the Research Exhibition Summit that's going to take place June 6th at the Conference Center from 3 to 5. Registrations open April 18th and will close on May 20th. The Lib Guide, we will put a link to that along with this podcast. And there are cash prizes for the top 3 that actually attend, and a $25 audience favorite, as well as first and second place for the digital. Any final thoughts on, maybe helping students getting off the ground, or what kind of resources will the library offer to help students? Any final thoughts that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, so on June 5th, from 4 to 6, which is the day before the research exhibition, there's a Build Your Poster party. We don't know the location yet. We will be communicating that soon, but there will be food, and I will be there just to help you build your poster. So procrastinators, it's okay, I can help you. Or if you want to come and practice with me, you can during that time. But librarians are your biggest assets here. You can just come to the library and we will help you through all of it. If you don't know what to write about or what to do research on, we can help you from the very beginning to the end. We will provide the trifold posters once you sign up, the paper, the glue, the color printing too, we can do for you. I also wanted to end by saying that we are looking to become more diverse. We have a lot of health sciences, which is so awesome, but we want to see more of the humanities, criminal justice, legal. We want everybody to get involved on campus.
I think what's, to me, very interesting about your job, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that, yes, we have meetings and things to go to and we have appointments, but your day could go 1,000 different ways just based on who walks in that front door,
Yeah, I wanted to be a librarian because I couldn't decide what I wanted to learn about. So now I get to learn a little bit about all the things. So it's wonderful. Well,
Samantha, I really appreciate not only the advocacy that you've already done in a short time being here on campus for our students. And like, for example, you've already helped with the internship program and our readings, professional readings that we have to do. So I appreciate that. You're already proving yourself to be just a huge asset to our campus. So thank you very much.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks.
Sure. One final note. Again, June 6th, Conference Center from 3 to 5. It is important that you do register. Registration will open April 16th and close on May 20th. And if you have any questions, I'll put Samantha's email along with this. Stop down to the library. Text. There's a text service for the librarians. Any questions you have about any of this, they are some of the easiest people to get a hold of here on campus. So, Samantha, thank you so very much for spending time with the Nightly News today.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So, for Instruction Reference Librarian Samantha Schultz, this is Professor Paul Miller, and we'll catch you next time on the Nightly News Podcast.
This is Matthew Vicklis, Dean of the School of Professional Studies. Thank you for listening to the Nightly News Podcast.
And welcome back to the Nightly News Podcast. My name is Brian Christiana. I am the president, and I am welcomed by a very familiar guest here. He is a communications professor here, and his name is Paul Miller. Thank you, Professor Miller, for being here today.
Well, obviously, I'm usually the host of the Nightly News Podcast, but I decided to turn it over to you for this special podcast previewing a very, very special event coming up.
Yes, that very special event will be the Big Lebowski showing at the Capitol Blue Cross Theater at Central Penn on April 27th. The doors open at 6 o'clock. The presentation is at 6:30 and screening at 7. There will be also a Q&A after for Professor Miller. Professor, please tell us a little bit more about why you chose the Big Lebowski.
Oh my, I somehow knew you were going to ask that question. Well, obviously this is part of the greater Humanities Film Series that Dr. Brant Ellsworth sort of got off the ground here at the college. And it was an initiative we came up with last year to really try to help bring the community in. Now, obviously, it's open to students and faculty and staff, but really what we wanted to also try to do, in addition to the Central Penn family that we already have here, we really wanted to try to bring some people in from off campus, community members, friends and family of the presenters, and people just interested in cinema. And this is the second attempt of the Humanities Film Series. Obviously, Professor Jared Reif did Jaws in January, and it was a big success. And so I've always been a fan of film, and I immediately volunteered to go, and I was given the second slot. Well, pretty early on after I was given that second slot it came for me to choose the film. And Brian, I'll tell you, The Big Lebowski, one of my favorite films of all time. However, anybody who knows me knows that I'm a huge Quentin Tarantino fan and a huge Christopher Nolan fan as well. And those were films that I had thought about doing. I had thought about maybe doing Pulp Fiction. I'd thought about maybe doing Dark Knight. My all-time favorite film is Reservoir Dogs, which I thought also would be interesting. But some of Tarantino's movies are a bit much for some. Obviously, he's got a lot of violence in his films, and I just didn't know that would be the film that I felt comfortable doing it at a college campus. Now, of course, it's not like Big Lebowski's, it's quite vulgar.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not like the language is crazy. It's
pretty crazy.
I enjoyed watching this movie. It was very good.
Well, so you ask, back to the original question, why did I choose The Big Lebowski? Well, I've been a fan of the Coen brothers for years, big fan of No Country for Old Men, but I realized something, and it's that in 2018, The Big Lebowski is celebrating his 20th anniversary. It came out in 1998. And it's a film that I feel really holds up and has a very big cult following. And so part of the reason that I picked The Big Lebowski is I know a lot of people who really, really like the movie. And it's not a requirement that you've seen the movie. In fact, it holds up and it's funny. And I think that, to me, when I was making that final decision, it was really just because I wanted people to come, and I personally wanted to do some research into the film and learn more about it.
Yeah, definitely. Jeff Bridges did a very good job. Talk more about the cast of this movie, please.
Oh my, it's what you'd call an ensemble cast.
It's loaded.
Loaded with people. Obviously, Jeff Bridges is the dude. John Goodman as Walter Sobchak. We have Donnie, played by Steve Buscemi. You've got Tara Reid as Bunny Lebowski, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Julianne Moore, and the list just continues to go. All of the stars in this movie. Very interesting cast they assembled, and many look back. Even Jeff Bridges, still to this day, looks back at The Big Lebowski as one of his favorite roles.
I'm a big fan of Sam Elliott. He as the stranger. He's a very good actor.
One of the things we're going to talk about in the film is why he is in the film, because when you watch it, he really doesn't have anything to do with the movie whatsoever. One of the things we're going to talk about is why does there need to be a narrator in this movie, because that's what he is. He's the narrator, and he's only got just a few parts, and the part at the beginning is very important, setting the stage, and then he comes into the film once or twice, and then he has a little part in the outro, so a small part, but he is the narrator. And I think that you guys, and I'm just going to hint at it a little bit, but we are going to talk a lot about film noir, and this is actually a film noir film. And a lot of people that watch Big Lebowski think, what is film noir? What does that have to do with anything? Well, it was a cinematic style of the 50s and 60s, and maybe even far back as the 40s, but really the 50s and 60s is when you saw a lot of this. Black and white, detective type films, very, very smoky, foggy, whether it's cigarette smoke or fog. It was always had that kind of, presence there, and it was always sort of a detective thing. And usually the detective was an anti-hero, which is a character that we root for, but really doesn't have very many redeeming qualities. I mean, the dude is an alcoholic,
yes.
a drug addict. He doesn't work.
He's kind of a bum.
He's not kind of a bum.
He is a bum.
He is a bum. Which is, Brian, what's really funny about this and why I thought it was interesting about film noir was because we love the dude, though.
Yeah, he's great.
He's a lovable character, but when you think about it, he has no redeeming qualities whatsoever.
Yeah,
so.
the other Mr. Lebowski even called him a bum right to his face, saying, "Oh, get a job like your parents did," and he pretty much...
The bums have lost.
Yeah, and all he did was put his sunglasses on and walked out of his house.
That's very perceptive, Brian, because that's actually part of my presentation that we're going to talk about, that specific scene.
Yeah.
So very good picking up on that.
Yeah, here I want to also bring up a fact about our cast. Did you know John Goodman said that this was his favorite film?
You can see why. I mean, Walter's character is one of the most elaborate characters in any Coen Brothers film, and I mean, it really gave Goodman an opportunity to really put himself out there as a major motion picture actor. Obviously, he was a star of Roseanne, but had never really... He'd been in some Coen Brothers movies previously, but he'd never really had the opportunity to have a feature film and star in a feature film as one of the main actors. And this actually has he's even admitted, has added a tremendous amount of longevity to his career.
Yeah, I thought it was funny when they're at the bowling alley in the early beginning of the movie. He said, "Dude," like how many times in like 20 seconds? It was crazy. Then him and how he was with Donnie, how he kept insulting Donnie for everything. And then when he pulled the gun on the guy at the bowling league, I was like, dang, this guy's crazy. He is something.
Well, and obviously the craziness continues throughout the film, whether it's throwing the ringer over the bridge or whether it's flipping out on the lady in the diner.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got several... he's got some anger management issues, to say the least.
Yeah, it had very high standards, this movie. It was rated an 8.1 on IMDb.
And honestly, anybody who knows anything about IMDb, I think one of the top films is only rated in the high 8s, so 9s are almost impossible to get. So, I mean, that goes to say a lot about the film. I think, and Brian, one of the main reasons, again, that I wanted to do this film is I think a lot of people view this film as a slapstick film, as a film that's really not all that serious, but this film does have so much depth to it and a lot of hidden symbolism that we're going to talk about when I give my presentation. Now, I do only have 30 minutes, so I'm not going to be able to go into everything, but I am going to touch on several things, and I think for those who either haven't seen it in a while or even big fans of it, I hope are going to look at the film much differently.
It was involved in the movie, but talk how bowling was huge in this movie.
Well, let me talk about how bowling was huge to me personally and about how I got into this. I don't know how much you know this and I don't know how much I talk about this, but I'm actually a really good bowler. I average pretty close to 200.
That's really good.
So yeah, I have bowled since I was 8 years old. My father, who unfortunately passed away a couple years ago, taught me how to bowl. He was an excellent bowler. And I bowled for 10 years when I was a kid till when I went to college. I went to college at Slippery Rock, and they had a bowling alley there, so I inquired about joining a league. And they told me that, unfortunately, they did not allow college students to bowl in the leagues because many of them would stop showing up. They weren't reliable. And then, of course, over breaks, you wouldn't be there. So, basically ever since then, the last 18 years of my life, we take the kids bowling occasionally, but I never bowled seriously. Well, last year, a friend of mine called me and said, hey, we have a need for somebody on our team, and I started bowling again. And over the last year, Brian, I've never bowled as well as I have in my entire life.
Wow.
And it's amazing that I basically walked away from the game for 18 years, and I was able to sort of pick right back up where I left. But to answer your question, the movie came out in 1998.
Yes.
And I was 17 years old. And at that time, I was a huge bowling fan. And I didn't know anything about the Coen brothers. I was just a teenager.
Yeah.
But I saw that it was centered around bowling. I think that's what got me and drew me in the first place.
Yeah.
But it was certainly something that has... if you're a bowler... You've seen The Big Lebowski.
Yeah.
And it's funny, like a lot of my friends in my league, in fact, my whole bowling team will be in attendance for the show.
That's great.
Yeah,
that really is.
So I have actually, I want to say I have about 10 people from my league coming.
Alone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just that. So it does, in a way, if you're a bowler at all, this and Kingpin are the bowling movies, If you haven't seen those two movies. Now, of course, this movie is not about bowling.
Yeah, I mean, it has a small part in it.
And I will describe a little bit more what role the bowling alley actually plays in the film.
Yeah.
Whereas Kingpin is a movie about bowling.
Yeah.
The Big Lebowski is not a movie about bowling. It just so happens to be where they meet and a few really, really funny scenes happen. But that's why I really watched it in the first place, and the rest is history, as they say.
Yeah, bowling. It's like you said, it's a very big part of the movie, but it was very interesting. Like we were talking about when John Goodman pulled a gun on a guy in a league.
One just small tidbit that I'd like to point out. Note one thing. There's only one of the three who you ever see take a shot, and that's Steve Buscemi.
Wow.
You never see the dude, and you never see Walter bowling a shot. Now, there is a picture, there is an area where Goodman is holding the ball, and he's puffing on a cigarette, but you don't see him physically throw the ball.
Yeah.
And that is another plot device that was specifically done by the Coen brothers. So I think that's something that we'll chat about as well.
Let's talk more about the dude. Yeah, the movie starts off. He walks into his house, and then he gets mugged by two men, mistaking him for another guy named Lebowski, whose wife owes money to them.
Well, and I don't think we have to worry about spoilers. The movie's 20 years old, so I'm hoping that if you haven't seen it, just hold off. And I'm probably, unfortunately, going to give some spoilers in the presentation anyway. So I do feel bad. Let's talk about the dude. Well, one of the biggest things that we will talk about during the presentation is how different the dude and Walter are as far as personality-wise, but I'm actually going to use a very interesting analogy, and it's I call it War and Peace. Walter is former military. He talks constantly about Vietnam.
Yep.
He's very, he obviously carries weapons on him at all times. He is the war aspect of it. But back in Vietnam, Brian, who was the counterculture here in the United States? Who were the people who were protesting against the Vietnam War?
Go ahead, tell me.
It was the hippie movement.
Oh, yeah, with like Woodstock and everything.
So back in Vietnam, you had the soldiers who were fighting in Vietnam, and then back home, you had the people who were protesting against Vietnam.
Yes, you're 100% right.
The dude represents that hippie movement, and he's a self-proclaimed hippie.
Yeah.
He's a pacifist. He's very, very laid back, rolls with the punches, but again, anti-war. But on the other hand, Goodman is pro-war, right? He, pulls guns on people. He's constantly talking about what it was like in Nam. And again, that is another plot device that is used by the Coen brothers. So even though they're friends, they really have two different personality types that reflect what happened in the late 60s.
That's really great. It was. Yeah, the dude, I really liked watching the dude. He was really good.
As I mentioned, he's the anti-hero. He is not somebody, if you would meet today, that would have very, you'd have very high thoughts about.
Your parents would probably tell you to stay away from him.
Yes. And one of the funniest lines I find in the movie is when the dude is meeting with Jeff Lebowski at his home, and Lebowski says, "You don't go out dressed like that on a weekday, do you?" And the dude says, "It's a weekday?" Like, he's that far out of it that he legitimately doesn't even realize that it's a weekday.
Yeah.
And the dude is not someone that you would hope
he's
to
not
emulate
a role
to
model.
be. But I'll tell you, I'm going to discuss some very interesting things about the dude that might help you look at him in a little bit different of a way.
Yeah.
And to me, that's what this Humanities Film Series is about, Brian. We take classic films and we really analyze them in hopes that people understand what film is all about. Yes, we go to see, Captain America or the Avengers, and we can take something away from that. And I'm not talking anything negatively about the directors of those movies, but that's not film.
Yeah.
Film is an art. And film, the directors and the cinematographers do everything calculated. Do everything in a calculated way. And there's not one thing that is done that is not done intentionally. And that's some of the things that I'm going to talk about as well.
That's great. Professor Miller, please talk about the Nightly News involvement with this project.
Well, that's a good question. We are always looking for unique fundraising opportunities, and this is one that I've found that I think this is going to be our fundraiser for the term. We are going to we're going to get either a 3 or 6 foot sub, and so we will have a ham sub available.
Yeah.
And I'm also going to make my famous batch of Maryland crab soup. So we'll have a crock pot full of that. I do encourage anybody coming to come at 6. I know that many will be coming directly from work, and that is why we are having this food available. And of course, we'll have drinks as well. And there's going to be no cost affixed to it. We just ask for a donation. And we're hoping to at least make our money back and to make a few dollars for the club. We'll have people manning the food service area in the underground theater. So I do recommend that you get there early and get there at 6 when the doors open. I'll be greeting everybody for the first 15 minutes or so till we have to go get ready, and stop by, grab something to eat, get a cup of soup and a soda, and I think that'll be good, especially because I do know a lot of people are coming. I did want to make one other point, Brian. Your good friend, Curtis Volker, also asked to be part of this event as well. If you don't know, he's running for the Leukemia Lymphoma Society Man of the Year, and it is fundraiser-based. So I thought we put our heads together, and they are going to be selling popcorn and movie snacks, your candy, your Starburst, those types of things. So that will go for donation to the Curtis's bid for Man of the Year. So we're going to have all kinds of stuff going on.
That's really great to hear, Professor. You guys have been working very well. The Nightly News, too, has been working very well with all the different clubs and activities. The live streaming we started doing is very good.
By the time this is recorded, we'll have live streamed 4 games. Obviously, you and I had the opportunity to call our first game, and Brian, I promise you, right now, it may not have sunk in yet, but you will remember this for the rest of your life.
Yes, it's
I promise you will look back 10 years from now and say, I started that.
Yeah.
And guess what? What's even better is when I was calling games at Slippery Rock, it was available online, but it wasn't archived. It was all just like a stream, and it wasn't archived that I could go back and listen to it. These aren't going anywhere. They're going to be on our YouTube page forever, and 10 years from now you can come back and you can watch that first game, and I promise you will, years down the line, you're going to look back and you're really going to look at it with a sense of pride. So I'm so happy the Nightly News is going well. We're very, very pleased to be sponsoring this event, and I look forward to you introducing me. So I'm honored that you're willing to do that.
Yeah.
We're also going to be live streaming the presentation.
I was going to bring that up. We're going to have Ian run the camera again. He's been doing very well with all the work he's been doing with baseball. One final question before we leave today. Can you discuss also future projects that will be in the Humanities Film Series?
I know that in July, Dr. Marcy Rovin will be doing Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. And in the fall term, I believe in October, Professor Tom Davis is going to be doing Airplane. Ooh. So we've got a wide variety of different types of movies, from Jaws to Lebowski to something a little bit more modern like Harry Potter to something, from the early 80s in Airplane. So I think that it gives the humanities professors, and hopefully it doesn't just have to be humanities professors, where I think it's open to everybody, but I do tell everybody that's listening out there, if you want to see this, if you want to come out and support me, this is the one to come to, because this is so popular. I'm pretty sure that we're already booked through 2020 for people that want to do these, because we're doing them quarterly.
That is great. That really is. Again, thank you, Professor Miller, for being here and giving us your time.
Everybody, just please put April 27th, that's this Friday, on your calendar. Please be there at 6. Grab something to eat for donation. We'll have popcorn, we'll have snacks, drinks, everything, the whole 9 yards. I'll start my presentation at 6:30, and the film will start promptly at 7 o'clock.
Again, thank you. This is Brian Christiana, and I am honored again to have Professor Paul Miller, and we will see you next time on the Nightly News Podcast.